All right, everyone, welcome back to another video. So glad to have you back. And today I am beyond excited to have Patti here, one of the founders from Cinesamples and Musio, of course. And so, in case you are new to the channel or haven't watched my content for a very long period of time, the Cinesamples libraries have been part of my template for probably around like at least 5, 6 years since the time I started writing music. And just the overall sound, the approachability, the overall workflow has just been really, really cool to see and fun to use. So it's just a pleasure to speak with Mike today. So first of all, Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess first of all, I'd be curious to know your personal start. Like maybe you can give us a quick background on your musical history and then maybe how the inception of Cinesamples came about.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started off, I think like a lot of people, we always have that moment that we can look back to when we're like 12 or 13 years old, when we're at the movie theater. For me, that was 1992 when
Mhm.
I saw Jurassic Park, and it was like, I stayed after for the credits, and it was like this incredible music. I was like, what the heck
Yeah.
is this sound coming out of the speakers? I didn't know what an orchestra was. I didn't really know much of that stuff. But it definitely planted the seed and started this, like I need to figure this out, because wait, there's somebody who actually, that was their job,
Mm.
was to kind of sit at a piano and learn and just write music, and then they, like, millions of people hear it. That's a thing,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
so it's like, oh, let me look into this. So of course that kind of like gets you to start going all in on. For me, I was a pianist, so I was like obsessing over the piano literature, classical piano literature, and just trying to get as good as I can get, and also composing on the side. Eventually, after graduating high school, I went to Hofstra University. Started off as a computer science major, um, with a minor in music, but then I switched those around and became actually a music major. And then, yeah, because I wanted to go to USC. USC, University of Southern California, at the time had one of the best programs for writing music for film and TV. And this was 2002. So it was like, that was like a new thing. I mean, nowadays there's like a lot of programs, but
Mhm.
USC was really the only one that was doing it. And I applied and I connected with Norman Buddy Baker, who was the sort of the chairman of the department. He's this like Disney legend
Wow.
who worked directly with Walt Disney on a bunch of movies and a lot of the music for the theme parks early on, and for the original Disneyland.
Mm.
He was like 85 years old and just like the sweetest guy. We would be chatting and I'd be like, oh man, I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan and I would love to get into USC, blah, blah, blah. And he
Right.
just pulled some strings because I wasn't the greatest student. So, but I guess he's like, what, this kid won't shut up. So let me see what I can do. And I got into USC and did that for a year. Then it was 20 years of a lot of like starting off as writing music for other composers. I did a short stint over at Hans Zimmer's studio, helping a few composers there
Cool.
because they were all using Giga Studio. But then I moved on and started writing music for a few other composers and being their assistant and just learning about what does it mean to write with a sequencer. Then I saw a need, like with a lot of people. We were all using virtual instruments. Many of them are very expensive, and but there were gaps in what was needed to do the kind of jobs and the work that we were doing. For me, I was writing a lot of doing mock-ups
Mhm.
for like a little like older composers who were still doing pencil and paper, but they still wanted to get jobs and do work, but the expectation was to show what is this going to sound like before we get to the orchestra. So I was doing a lot of that, and I was like, all right, well, why don't, so a friend of mine, who from New York, we created a sample library. It was the first one in 2007. It was a harp library. And then I started using it on things, and we thought, well, what if we put it on a website
Mhm.
and sold it on, at the time, there was no Facebook, there
Mhm.
was no, it was just MySpace, I think.
Right.
And so we were on that, and VI Control was still
Oh, it was
around.
around.
That was,
Okay.
yeah, so
Cool.
VI Control has been around for a long time.
Nice.
And we posted, that was August of 2007. Like, hey, check out this cool thing. It's like, I don't know, $70. You get an amazing harp.
Right.
Click here, you know. And people were buying it. It was crazy. I was like, holy mackerel. I guess, like, wait, people are giving us their money for a thing.
Right.
All right. And they like it.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just do another one. And, what's another niche thing that we can make that isn't there? Just we did some like percussion in a bigger
Right, right,
room.
right.
Did that, and then we did like another one in an even bigger room, and it just kind of got like progressively more ambitious. We
Yes.
started doing stuff in Seattle, which is it was a very popular place to record choirs for like trailer companies, and so we recorded the choir there.
Mm,
And then in 2011, we're like, well, what if we could actually just forget all of this? Let's just go to the source. Let's go to the place where John Williams recorded Jurassic Park,
mm, yeah.
and like all of the Pixar movies, and like, and so that was the MGM scoring stage. Well, I call it we all call it the MGM scoring stage. I think it's technically called the Barbra Streisand scoring stage, um, but it's on the Sony Pictures lot in Culver City, and it's a it's kind of a it's an ugly room. It's like this
Mm,
giant rectangle with like cardboard on the walls and like a wooden floor with like coffee spilled everywhere. And
it's well loved. It's what it is.
yeah, and it's just like, and there's like all the stands have like these wood panels on them, and everybody there's like
Right,
all these markings of all the musicians making fun of the conductors, like over the last several decades.
right, right.
And there's so much history there. um they're like, yes, we got to record here, and you get that sound. Like, well, we need an engineer. And at the time, Dennis Sands was very involved with USC, and so we got to know him. Dennis Sands, as we know, was the scoring mixer on Back to the Future and Forrest Gump and all like a lot of Alan Silvestri and Danny Elfman movies. And so let's do this. Let's see. And so he uh, surprisingly said yes to working with these two kids, and did our first session. It was one day. It was all we could
Right.
afford. Like a day at Sony with we did a triple, which means 9 hours of recording, three, three, and
Wow.
three. It was like we did trumpets and then like French horns and then like low brass,
Hmm.
and just, hey, here's a thing. It's like not everything, but we're gonna call it, give it a name, Cinebrass. And so we
Yeah.
put it on, made it in contact format and sold it, and people really liked it because it was really cheap too. Like we didn't sell it for a lot. It was like, you know, uh, just wanted to see, hey, look, we did a thing. And we also started, paying residuals to musicians. So it was through the union, and uh, paid paid musicians a residual, uh, a percentage of the sales all went to the players. So I
Right.
think people responded well to that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that kind of grew from there. It's like this
Yeah.
weird organic thing. You just kind of like
Totally.
fall into it.
Yeah.
Like, I guess this is the thing that's like people want it, and we'll just keep doing that. And as it grows, you're just like, you kind of go along for the ride. So obviously, we're very lucky because there's like a timing aspect to it.
Mm,
There weren't a lot of other companies doing this as well. Spitfire also started the same time we did.
mm,
Of course, Spitfire just exploded in recent years,
mm.
um, and because they have different. Yeah, well, good for them. But so we always remain very like small and boutique, and kind of
Yes.
like, right now it's just owned by me. There isn't a bunch of
Right.
like
Right.
investors or anything.
I
So
love that. Yeah.
um,
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I have to say, there's a certain like charm and nostalgia to watching the old Cinesamples walkthroughs, especially the first Cinebrass one. And I especially really enjoyed your from mock-up to orchestration video, if you know which one I'm talking about, where you showed the mock-up. I think it was in Digital Performer, and then you had the score. The orchestra was playing the piece. It was just really cool to see. I'm sure that video has inspired a lot of people.
oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's a fun one. But I'd be curious to know, like, so in a traditional sort of, let's say, sampling process, um, what sort of general steps are sort of involved in that? And like, yeah, how does the process sort of look, and what does it take to, on a general level, go from the initial idea to a completed library, just as a summary, let's
Yeah,
say.
I mean, real quick, there's the planning stage, which is figuring out what the heck you want to record.
Mm,
Um, and really, it starts with what is the final result? Like, what do you really want to try to capture at the end? Like, what is the instrument going to be?
right.
And you kind of reverse engineer from there. So then, you got to hire the studio and the players.
Hmm.
Step one. Step two is creating a some charts, and we don't like write out all of the music. It's usually like one page that has the notes that we need them to sample, and we'll
Right.
usually say, hey, just you got a click going, just play that note for 4 beats and then pause for 2 beats and then play the next one for 4 beats. We have a certain way of like, there's a pattern that's established
Sure.
so that we get all of the articulations.
Mhm.
And usually a lot of it is what I've learned is we thought like you try to plan everything perfectly, but when you get to the session, there's a lot of things that change. So there has to be that element of like, if you're sampling weird instrument in like Iceland, for example, like a tagelharpa or something, like if there's no one on the team who's an expert at the tagelharpa, we just like have to figure it out on the fly. We're like,
Mm.
okay, oh well, I guess that's the range. Okay, good. This is what we'll do. Da da da. So there's this element of like be like show up with a plan and then throw it out the window.
Right. Okay.
um, anyway, yeah, you record everything. You record every note of the instrument in every possible way, short, long. You know,
Hmm.
usually working with the musician to say like, well, what's something that you would normally do here?
Right.
Is there an inflection or something that is cool or unique to that instrument? Like, oh yeah, well we do this thing, and then you go, yes, quick hit record, and then
Right.
we'll sample the whole range of him doing that thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you have this giant Pro Tools file that has like hours of recording,
Mm.
and that Pro Tools file then goes to, well, on our team it's Santiago, who goes through and does a denoising pass
Oh yeah.
and a mixing pass and exports it as a bunch of audio files for all the
Mm.
microphone positions. So
Sure.
you've got, hopefully this is not too technical, but like, you got the full mix, you've got the close, you got the room, and you have the surround. Usually that's what we have, four
Hmm.
total. And then you do the chopping and mapping process, and then you map it, and then you convert it to Musio format
There you
or
go.
contact format or whatever the heck
Right.
format you're using. Contact takes way longer because there's a scripting language,
Mm.
there's the user interface design, you got to do all that stuff. And that was the main reason we built Musio, is because we just wanted to be able to get the instruments out there, accomplishing like all of these things that are just the basics of what you need, and get it into
Sure.
people's hands as fast as possible. And here's the thing about Musio that's great is that like we put it out to the best of our ability, but guess what? We're not perfect. We're humans, so
Hmm.
things kind of slip through the cracks. And what we do is there's a feedback button on Musio, so if like people are like,
Mm.
the B flat
Yeah.
on the contrabass bassoon is a little sharp, and you could be like, damn it, we missed it. Okay, thank you, and then we can fix that,
Sure.
and then send up an update real quick.
Right. Right. Right.
So
That's very
yeah,
useful.
yeah.
But you basically led me right into my next question is like, what is something that's underappreciated about the sampling process? So like, of course, we all want feedback to make our products better, but if someone is like, oh, this specific issue, is bothering me, um, what's one thing that would be really difficult to kind of redo and fix? Maybe something we don't really get to hear about as much.
The thing that's difficult, well, like I said, just the painstaking, just the time that it takes to do it is
Mm,
very, very, because to do it right. I think that you
right.
can go
Yeah.
through and automate the whole thing, but there's the human component that just makes it better. Scripting for contact is just a very, very difficult thing. Uh, Again, I say this all the time, but like I don't disparage the guys who made contact, because it was the industry standard and it still is kind of. And it's just very difficult to do some things that should be really easy. Um,
Mm,
the crossfading of I know this is so nerdy, but like
this is
a
perfect. Yeah, I
loop
love
a
it.
loop crossfade, like where you have a sustain,
Yeah.
and then you have to have it loop, because when you hold your key down on the keyboard, it just plays. It's a violin that just should hold forever until you
Mm,
release it.
yeah.
Well, that hold is a loop, and that loop needs to be really smooth. You don't want to hear it every single time. So it's like, "Brr, brr, brr," you don't want to hear that.
Hmm.
So you have to create manual equal power crossfades,
Mm.
and there's no way to do that in contact natively.
Well, so yeah, why don't we talk about Musio a little bit? Like, what was the main motivator to start this brand new thing when you had Cinesamples that was, booming and the libraries are a huge success, and then Musio makes it so much sort of easier to get writing right away. And yeah, maybe you can just tell me about the vision of Musio and what it's all about.
Yeah, we actually just put a video out today talking a little bit about that. So we can put
Cool.
a link below, a link
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah. Like
here.
right on the side, yeah.
Um, where we went through the history of it and like the thought process behind it. And it started in 2016 with just this random idea. Um, you have an idea, it's good to write it down. Like, what the
Oh
heck
yeah.
should, you know, because there were a lot of frustrations with the existing sampler formats, as I
Mm,
mentioned,
yeah.
that were like, well, what if we built our own? And how do we make this work really well for composers? And so I had a whole document that I started 2016, and then like I wanted to do it as part of a Cinesamples project as part of the company,
Mm,
but we didn't really have the resources to do it. And so, I talked to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, can we use our life savings to to try this to do a sampler project?" And of
right.
course, she's just crazy, and Lynch says, "Absolutely, of
Woo.
course." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And so I hired two really talented engineers, Harrison Lee and Toby Sheriff, and we built kind of this first prototype of what was called, I think, Cloud Sampler at the time. We had multiple names. It went from
Mm,
Cinesampler, Cloud Sampler, we didn't know what the heck it was,
yeah.
and put it out there to get people's feedback, just a small group of people, and it seemed like, oh, this is cool. We like this. We need more sounds though. And I remember when we launched it, it was like to crickets. It was in April of 2 years ago, this
Right.
last month, and it was like, hello, hello. Um, where are you? We're
Yeah.
making this
We're doing
cool
something
thing, but
cool. Come
meanwhile,
on.
like, because it was the time where like the world was still like recovering from the
Yes.
pandemic and
Yes.
so noisy, and like you're trying to be like, we made a cool thing,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
of
no one
course.
cares. But that's okay because it wasn't a fully fleshed out product, and it wasn't
Mm,
until October of 2023 where we had all the entire Cinesamples catalog in there. It was like, all right, now it's a thing, and
mm,
figuring out what the pricing should be,
sure.
and and it's growing. It's and people are starting to like it, and it's
Amazing.
becoming its own brand. You got to think. So all that to say, when you're starting a business, you can't rest on your laurels. I mean, we've been doing Cinesamples for 17 years. That doesn't mean it's going to continue for another 10 years like magically. You
Yeah,
have to like adjust to the times,
sure.
and there's because there's so many more music creators. It's not just professionals anymore. It's not
Mm,
just the people that can afford $6,000 worth of sample libraries.
right.
It's like there's a lot of people that just love to do it. There's hobbyists. There's people that you know um, maybe are aspirational. You have to accommodate those people. Yeah,
Sure.
and so that's what Museo allows us to do.
Yeah. And I love that approach of just adapting with the times because for me personally, like I really enjoy the original contact libraries for sure. Like I still use Cinebrass every day. Cineperk is my main percussion library. Cinepiano, I don't know if you've seen any of my Cinepiano videos, but
Yeah,
I've made probably three of those, and Cineharps is up there as well. So those like for me are like golden charms that I just keep in my template all day. But yeah, and then sometimes I'll turn to Musio too for additional things, and it's nice to see the breadth and the variety that you have in there. So I'm just curious to know, do you have personally a favorite Cinesamples library and a favorite Museo exclusive sort of library, ones that you hold really close to your heart? Just out
yeah.
of curiosity.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you for being such a great like supporter of us,
Oh man, of
and
course, my
and
pleasure. Yeah.
and just kind of like, because you don't really get anything out of it, and I really like it means a lot that you're
Appreciate
making
it.
these videos, and
Thank
like
you.
um not just Cinesamples but like the recent Museo stuff, and
Right, right, right.
helping us get the word out.
Totally. Right.
It so thank you. You're very
Yeah,
good
my
at it.
pleasure.
You're very good at this YouTube thing.
Oh my gosh, no, no,
YouTube will be
YouTube
big
God.
one day.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, no. So like, I don't know, favorite stuff. I mean, probably the original Cinebrass was really cool, just because it like
Mm,
was the first time we did something that was like ambitious. It's like, what if we
yeah,
did a crazy thing? That
right,
seems
right,
impossible. We can't do that.
right.
And then we did it, and it wasn't that big of a deal after you do it, and then you just keep. Um, well, most recently, we started expanding out of LA and doing recording sessions in various parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so we went to Iceland, Ireland, Scotland, and South Africa.
Wow.
It's kind of the places that we're starting. And South Africa was really cool. A lot of unique instruments. We sampled a choir there, which is coming out pretty soon in Musio. We had a chance to work with Voces 8, which is like this iconic group out of England, choir group,
Right.
and Grammy Award winning group.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean everything. There's a lot of stuff. I just
Beautiful.
have to pinch myself that we get to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Dreams come true. Well, yeah. Is that what the future of music is looking like? You continue to sample new, unique instruments. You travel. You find inspirational things to capture and continue to add to music. Is that like the roadmap for now?
Yeah. Well, the vision for Musio is to have sample every instrument on Earth
There we go. Wow.
and have it be
Okay.
accessible to every musician on Earth.
I love it. Yeah.
That's ultimately what we want to try to accomplish,
Yes.
which is perhaps an impossible goal. I don't know. Who cares? I think that we can do it, and just we built the foundation for it. And the
Hmm.
foundation is, well, let's just at least get the Cinesample stuff in there with a few extra cool stuff,
For
right?
sure. Yes.
And then just keep adding over time. I don't know how long it'll take. We might never get there.
Hmm.
Uh, it might take 20 years. Maybe it'll happen fast. I don't know. Maybe some
Hmm.
gracious benefactor will come along and be like, "You got what you guys are doing is amazing."
Sure. Yeah.
Santa Claus will come by and be like, "Here's $1 bajillion. Make it happen."
Yeah. Yeah.
We all right. That'd be cool.
That
Um,
would be, yeah.
so
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of that's the ultimate plan. And despite all of this, like I think we're all very keenly aware of AI and
Mm-mm.
all the stuff that's going on there. Especially with Suno and Udio
Yeah.
and this auto-generated stuff. And it's like it's funny to see that like the general public doesn't seem to care that much about it.
Hmm.
And I think that there'll be a use for it, but I don't think it's that huge of a threat to
Right.
people that want to make music and be creative because there's no replacing that experience that you get from creating something, like going through the arduous process
Yeah.
of writing something
Yeah.
and like being proud of it and being like, look what I did. Yes.
Exactly.
And I don't think you get that if you spend 30 seconds writing a prompt.
Right. I
Yeah.
think I made a video about it probably last year. And I think so from your perspective, that makes a lot of sense, like from the creator, but I think also from the hiring side, when because like as AI becomes more advanced and stuff, yeah, they can maybe replace some of the basic like stock music writing jobs, but I think studios and major developers will also realize, wow, we should place more priority in human created stuff. Like the human touch is something that AI just can't replace, um, hopefully ever, you know. And so I think there's that as well, where people will respect real musicians more and live players and people,
Yes.
knowing that there's this AI element to it too. They're just like, okay, I'd rather go with a live route, knowing that I'll get a more human result as well,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. I mean, there's going to be a push and a drive for human experiences, like
Yeah,
real life experiences. I mean, look, AI is going to explode and it's probably going to it will transform the world in a
sure,
way that we
yeah.
can't possibly fathom. But we are going to remain human beings and we're still going to want
Mm,
to seek out those human experiences. And we just saw like Disney, um, they're like quadrupling down on the theme parks, for example. They just invested another $80 billion into the theme
wow.
parks because they
Okay.
rightfully so, I think, see that people still want to go to a thing
Hmm.
where you're walking around and you're physically in a place where you're
Yes.
experiencing a thing. And I hope that's the same for music. I think that people will want to see live music. They'll want to go to concerts.
Hmm.
to see humans do amazing things, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I use an example of like, people that solve Rubik's cubes really fast. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the coolest thing. And it's like these are people that have like spent a lot of time getting good at such a weird thing.
Right.
But we love to watch that because it's like, wow, it's a human. Like
Yeah.
we wouldn't it doesn't matter if a computer did it or some
Sure.
robot did it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that makes sense. But if a human did it, like, wow, they put the time and effort into it. So I think that's
Exactly.
always going to be the case. Like, wow, a human doing a cool thing
Yes.
will make people turn their heads and go, that's cool. So whether you're good, you could be good at the piano, good at the
Mm.
violin, good at the guitar. Like that's still very, very important.
Yeah.
And I think other human beings will want to watch you do that.
Yeah.
That's
That's so
my
true.
view.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
anytime AI steps into a creative field, there's going to be some pushback, no, no matter
Yeah.
what. So
Yeah.
even though, even if it's helpful, yeah, I still think humans should be like the top.
Totally. And maybe, maybe there's some hybrid, there's likely to be some kind
Yeah.
of a hybrid thing where we're working together with AI to
Yeah.
help. Because there's certainly a lot of aspects to writing music, as you know, like editing MIDI and like getting tweaky with the velocities and all this stuff. Like if some aspect of that is automated, I'd be cool with that. As long as
Mm.
like you're not removing the intention of the human.
Yes. Yes. Great. Yeah. Well said.
Mm.
Um, Final question, sort of unrelated, but as a pianist yourself, how important do you feel it is to have that sort of musical background in the first place to, be a composer? Like there are lots of people who can't play or don't know theory and they can create great music, but what are the benefits of being able to play and knowing at least basic music theory? Because I know your family plays and I'm sure they all appreciate that as well. So for you, like what have you seen as sort of the benefits of being able to play well and get your ideas across in an efficient manner?
Oh, well, I think it's really important. I know
Yeah.
no one wants to hear that. I think education, you got to keep growing,
Yeah.
keep getting better. But here's the thing is like starting out, you don't have to know. It's like just write something. You can know
Mm,
nothing about music, but just fumble your way into it. Like
yeah.
just try and create something. You may not know the names of the notes on the keyboard. That's
Mhm.
fine. That's okay to start there. But then I think all of us want to try to like, well, what are the names of the notes? you know,
Yeah.
what's an interval? What's a chord? Which chords go better together? Which instruments go better together? Like you start to learn a lot of this stuff. And what's great with all of these tools that we're building and others are building, you can kind of learn on your own. YouTube is an amazing resource. Um, I will say that those though that really have decided to dive in and really understand the mechanics of music and are curious about that sort of foundational like music theory and they do old fashioned score analysis and things
Mm,
like this really will make a huge difference because you'll stand apart but learn from things like that and
yeah.
that makes sense but you're a phenomenal musician and that's like you're already that's a great thing you spent the time and the effort to learn the underlying mechanics of how this world works
Sure.
so that you can better express yourself. Well,
Right. Well,
all that to
yeah,
say, if that made sense, like, yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much.
it's
Yeah.
very important, but don't let that dissuade somebody from getting started.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
write something, hum a
Right.
melody, and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's a point at which I think when we learn too much, it starts to influence our writing choices because we feel like we have to write in a certain way. We can't
that's a good
break
point.
out of the
Yeah,
box, right?
yeah. I don't know about you, but like I started off like I'm a really good sight reader, but in
Hmm.
terms of like I try to do jazz and it's like pretty pathetic.
Oh,
Like I don't I mean I
sorry to
can
hear.
kind of fake it to make it sound like I'm doing
Sure.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know all the harm. I could play a chord chart pretty
Yeah.
well, but
Yeah.
um, like that's a huge thing if you can just use your ear and not get bogged down by the notes. Sometimes a C major chord in the right way can
Oh
sound
yeah.
amazing, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Yeah, I still remember like I still think to myself sometimes, oh, some of those piano lessons I had as a kid, they felt like torture at the time, oh, you have to practice. But looking back now, it's like, oh, thanks for all the theory lessons, for all the piano lessons,
Yeah, yeah.
they shaped you
It's
into
essentially because like I don't know, but I always think back to my old piano teacher, like whenever I'm like playing, I'm like little
yeah.
things that he taught me, and I still think about
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
little
exactly.
tricks and
Yeah,
things you can
absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it definitely helps you become a more well-rounded composer for sure. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's all I have, Mike. So thank you so much again, and hopefully everyone watching really enjoyed this chat. And of course, if you want to check out what Cinesamples and Musio are doing, there are links below. So definitely check that out. But yeah, thanks again, Mike, for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right, guys, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.